and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Roundup. I'm Jenny, and today's guest offers a bold, refreshingly honest take on healing and personal growth. After healing from PTSD and chronic illness, he found his way not just to wellness, but to a deeper purpose. As a hope dealer, he now shares a unique path that blends spiritual insight with wit, a fearless voice, and everyday wisdom. He's here to talk about his book, Sorcery 101: 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Let's all welcome Justin Elshaw. Hi, Justin. Welcome to the show.
Hi, great. Yeah, good to be here or there. Everywhere. We're everywhere right now.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and, just ask you some questions about your book and your journey as an author. So, what was the inspiration for your book, Sorcery 101? And how did the concept of sorcery come to you?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a story. We can get into that. So, good to know a little bit about my background. I grew up, you kind of went over it a little bit. I had a tough childhood, which caused a lot of issues. I kind of lived in an emotional vacuum where things just simply weren't discussed, any sort of things of vulnerability or anything like that. And when you grow up in a home like that where everything is kind of suppressed and held back, it causes issues. When a child is not told they're important or loved or safe, they look to the world for love, validation, and safety, and the world is always going to tell them they're unloved, unsafe, and not important. And that is exactly what happened with me. So that led to some really tough times, especially in my 20s. And that was just a really kind of miserable time. 20s are supposed to be a kind of your fun time, but there were times it was fun, I must admit. There were some party times and there was fun to it, but I had no joy. I was constantly chasing something that was impossible to catch. And so that led to just, I mean, I spent nights in rehabs and halfway houses and park benches and, just a lot of things that come along with kind of mental, emotional illness and drug and alcohol addiction and all that, and, jails. And, thankfully I avoided any felonies, but I've certainly spent many nights in, one time things in jails. And so it was not a fun time in my 20s. And in my 30s, I finally was, late 20s, I got help. And and the system here for helping something with a disease labeled chronic is tough because the medical community and everything is kind of the focus on the symptom. So, like for my depression, I was told to go see a psychologist. For my anxiety and ADD, I should go see a psychiatrist and get some pills. For my alcohol addiction, I should go to AA meetings. But don't talk about drugs and that's just for your alcohol meetings. Go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings for your drug meetings. Don't mix the two. And if you want to talk about anything with your soul and spirit, you don't want to talk about it, that you want to go to church for that. And so there's just all this separation of all these things. And it just it worked for a while. I did that, and it worked for a while. But when something happens and nothing is really cured, you're just managing symptoms, just constantly just managing symptoms. When something really tough happens, it's really easy to fall back. And that's what happened with me in 2018. My mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and so that was a whole, year-long thing. She that was traumatic in itself, and my religion kind of made it even worse. And then, my sister died shortly after that. I had a close childhood friend die. I was attacked in the face with an Alaskan Malamute and all these awful things. And then, the sorcery thing came about kind of. I had an experience in meditation. I'll talk about that. It kind of in the middle of all these events, but the final thing was, I had a fiance. We had an infant son together, and she just decided to, she has her own spiritual issues. She just decided to up and leave and move across the country, and then at that point decided to just cut me out of the picture. So I haven't seen or talked to him in 2.5 years. So like this is this has been, and that's not to say woe's me. That's just to say, hey, I understand pain, and I had to go through this horribly traumatic, tough time period
Mhm.
in order to, birth something pretty great. And
Mhm.
so the whole sorcery thing came. I had just after my ex left, it was kind of a trauma response. I moved to Sedona, which is here in Arizona. It's kind of a mecca for spirituality, and that's just where I felt a calling to, right? So it's just like, all right, and I need healing, and I need to go up there. And so I spent a year up there, and it was good. I worked in a kind of a halfway house for traumatized young adults and everything, and that was really good healing. But in that time, I set my intention when I got up there. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I can't, seem to hold down jobs because I constantly question things, and it's just so my life is just a complete dumpster fire. It was just a total dumpster fire. So I kind of set my intentions, and during that time in Sedona, that's when the inspiration hit me, and it was to kind of be uh, when when Source knocks on your door, and we'll get into what Source exactly is. When Source knocks on your door and you open it, it's impossible to close again. And I had a moment where Source, came into my being and allowed me to understand that what this kind of reality is, and how interesting it is. And we're surrounded by a field of energy, and it is explaining source to someone is a bit like explaining water to a fish. So if you understand, trying to explain water to a fish is difficult. It would be like, well, it's this substance, it's around you, and it's how you get around, it's how you live and breathe, and it's without water you wouldn't be alive. And that's what source energy is. It's this substance that surrounds us at all times. It is a field of information and energy, and it can be tapped into at any time for healing, for thriving, for inspiration, for ideas, for anything. And this moment I had with source, that I've had several of these intensely, what I call bliss attacks.
Mhm.
So these were drug-free, just moments of complete bliss. It was like a panic attack if you replace panic with love. So the whole sorcery thing came to me, and that's it is spelled with a U, because I know people hear sorcery and it's like, are you going to teach me how to turn my roommate into a frog, or are
Right.
you going to levitate the remote to my hand? It's like that's a different series of books. I'm not Gandalf. So I spell it with a U to kind of distance itself from the kind of magic aspect to it, but it's real magic. It is tapping into this source energy, and getting your mind off airplane mode. So I,
Mhm.
I realized that in these moments of these transformational moments, that I had been in airplane mode my whole life. And when a phone, you turn it on when you get on the airplane, there's no signals that come in, there's no texts or emails, or you can't get anything. So a phone perpetually in airplane mode is not living up to its potential. I mean, it's still useful, but it is not living up to its potential.
Mhm.
So the whole idea behind this system and the rungs and everything was to have people try to get people in, and there's a formula to it. There's a way to do this, that you can experience this often. And once it happens once, you're now off airplane mode. Airplane mode doesn't come back on. You can try to ignore it, but it'll be there. So I want everyone to have one of these transformative experiences, and that's kind of what this is about. It's about kind of clearing up old traumatic energies, and the thing with trauma is it gets stuck in our frontal lobe, right? And our frontal lobe is so critically important. It's what separates us from the animals, and it's in charge of our personality and impulse control and judgment, and like all these critically important things that make us human. And that's where trauma sits. It's right
Mhm.
there. And it just clouds our frontal lobe to where we can't make clear decisions. And so this idea of sorcery is um it's about, so the medical community, as I said, there's a lot of separation, and it's about the symptoms and things like that. So Sorcery is about bringing it all together. There was one core issue I was suffering from, and that's spiritual bankruptcy. And that is the core issue to all these things I was told to different things and go to AA and all these things that were both helpful, but at the same time could be detracting equally as detracting. So it is about, and that's not to say anything about the medical community, because if I break my bone, right, like, and it's sticking out of my arm,
Mhm.
don't send me to an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
That's not an appropriate thing, right? Like, so there's medical community is very, very important when it comes to acute injuries like that one. When it comes to chronic, though, they don't have the full picture because it is mind, body, spirit. And they're only just now saying, okay, mind and body are connected. And that's like really within the last 10 or 20 years. That's very, very recent. But spirit is still left out of the whole thing completely. And there will never be a solution for chronic disease with spirit left out of it. And they kind of like it that way a little bit because a cured individual lines no one's pockets, right? So when you go to a doctor um then they put on a cast, they heal your bone, they do the surgery, whatever you need, and then they'll put on the cast so that it starts healing. It is the body itself that does the healing. The doctor's part is
Mhm.
then done.
Mhm.
And what this system is like setting the emotional slash spiritual bone and then
Mhm.
letting the body heal itself. If you don't set that bone, because it's very hard to understand, like the world of energy. So that's trying to make it seem like the body is the best way I can explain it. So it's about setting your emotional and spiritual bone, and there's a formula to it that you have to do it, and then the body will heal itself. But you
Mhm.
have to set the bone.
Mhm.
Otherwise, these traumas and things will stay right here and control our lives. And so that, it's everything I've been through has been really tough, but at the same time, I've found something that works for everything. I don't have, I'm I don't want to say I'm completely cured. There's no completely cured. Everything always leaves a scar, right? Like, you
Mhm.
that bone issue, it's gonna, you got a bone sticking out of your arm, it's gonna leave a scar. But that scar there, once you can discharge the memory with the emotion, now your trauma has been alchemized into wisdom, and that's kind of the scar. The memory is there, but you don't have that guttural like that reaction anymore. So scars are not a bad thing. It's
Mhm.
just leaving these wounds we have as gaping huge wounds. That, I mean, all these things that I was told, hey, go to doctor. These all felt like band-aids on a shotgun wound. Like it didn't matter how many band-aids you put on a shotgun wound. You need something else. So
Mhm.
that's where this kind of came in, and bit of a long-winded answer, but that's where this whole thing kind of came about.
Mhm. So this is a very deeply personal book for you, and you've mentioned about what you've been through and what you had to go through in order to find yourself on the path to healing. So I want to touch on the way you presented your book. So your book weaves humor and spirituality together. I think it's also because of your background as a comedian, but how do you see comedy playing a role in healing or awakening?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that separates this book from I read a lot of spiritual books, or quantum
Mhm.
physics are a big one, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor. This is a comedian's take on the whole thing. But knowledge comes from books, but wisdom is sourced. So that comes from the field. So
Mhm.
what I kind of did was I tapped into this. I didn't write this book by thinking with my brain. The
Mhm.
brain is the receiver that taps into this field I'm speaking of. So I tapped into the field. So the field is now coming through, but it's filtered through my subconscious, through my experiences, through my humor. And so this is ancient wisdom that's been around since the beginning of time that was filtered through me and came out on the computer. So as it was filtered through, it came out with a lot. There was a lot of jokes and humor, and I believe laughing might not add years to your life, but it'll add life to your years. So that's a big
Okay.
part of healing is laughing.
Mhm.
And also I was able to use a lot of, pop culture and things like that because I grew up
Right.
essentially in front of television screen. I mean,
Mhm.
so like I know movies like the back of my hand. Like you can't don't bother taking me on movie trivia. I'm gonna beat you. But like it's the pop culture is just something that came through. So between the humor and the pop culture, that's a big part of the book. And
Mhm.
so but the humor is just really important because it puts people in the right energy for healing. If you get people are only going to accept, believe, and to surrender to the energy they're currently in. So to get people to open up to these ideas, to have some humor in it and to have some levity, now people are willing to kind of accept and be like, okay, let's talk. Trauma healing does not have to be serious all the time. There it's at its moments when things need to be serious, but it doesn't have to be serious all the time.
Mhm.
So that's where that came in, and I use a lot of current metaphors in the pop culture because I love that Jesus was such an effective spiritual leader and teacher because of his parables and the way he was able to take this force, which he was heavily connected to, he was tuned right into, and he was able to take this thing and kind of explain it in terms that people could understand. And that's something I really took from his teachings. And that's what made him such a great teacher. But unfortunately, a lot of his parables are 2,000 years old. And like people are like, what do you mean put wine in old wineskins? What does that even mean? Like,
Correct.
so like the field is still, it's still the same information he used, but he used it in parables of his time. So I'm taking it and using it in parables of my time, which is that humor and the pop culture element, and using
Mhm.
technology. Technology is a big one that I use in there as metaphors and parables for this field to be able to explain it.
So, humor and pop culture, both conscious effort to relate to your audience, right? So,
Mhm.
you have been very open about your struggles with addiction, PTSD, and mental health in this book. What was the turning point in your healing journey?
Well, I've had several. So the first one came in the rehab center in my late 20s, and people kind of got around me, and I just was so lost, and I kind of asked this group of people. It was kind of a faith-based Christian rehab center, and they kind of got around me and prayed, and we did the whole prayer to Jesus thing, and I felt kind of this amazing jolt of electricity and just this wow, like I like this awakening moment that people say they experience, and I had that happen. So immediately now I want more of that. Like, so what do I need to do to get more of that? And then I was guided into the whole Christian religion, and this is what you need to do. You need to go to Bible studies. You need to believe this. You need to believe that. And a lot of it was good, and a lot of it was very helpful, but a lot of it wasn't helpful at all. So, a sorcerer can see the world in the world of gray that it is. There is no black and white. The Bible, Christianity can be both helpful and destructive. And so I found it to be that first awakening moment. Like there were years of that, but and there were helpful times, but I never found that feeling again. And this idea of like if you don't go to a church and tithe your things and listen to the pastor and do the things. And my mother was not a practicing Christian, and her
Mhm.
death was that made her death way more traumatic on me, thinking that she had a possibility of going to hell, as opposed to who I am now, where I would be like a shepherd in the afterlife and I'd be like, "You're gonna be so excited, mom! You can't wait!" Like it's like taking off a tight shoe. The pain is gonna be over, and I'd be such a different. But that was not me at the time. I was terrified, and that was horrible, probably for her. Like just my energy. I didn't. I just it was bad. So at that point, that was my second awakening. Was like this is not this is not working for me. This is not working for me at all. So that's when I started really doing some deep searching. And that's when I kind of doing kind of the shadow work, which is the first rung, and questioning a lot of beliefs that I had about myself and the world around me and this whole spiritual thing, and questioning things that didn't sit right with me, and letting go of a lot of garbage. And during that time, that kind of opened me up to this new reality and things. And I say there's 13 rungs in the consciousness. That's kind of how I organized it in my head. I needed some way of organizing it, And instead of steps, like moving forward is good, but moving up is better because a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm. But there's 13 for a very specific reason. And 13 came to me because 13 is here in America at least is known as a very unlucky number to the
Yeah.
point where there's no 13th floor on in hotels. Like
Elevator.
it's ridiculous. And there's no reason really behind it. But because the truth is 13 is known in tarot as death, rebirth, and transformation. And it's also a very lucky number associated with the divine. So
Mm-hmm.
13 is to get us to start questioning false beliefs like the number 13, and it's about to get like questioning these things that we think we know hold true but could be standing in the way of these experiences that I've had that you're asking about, like these awakening experiences. And what's paradoxical about the whole thing is that religion can actually be the one thing that stands in the way of having a true religious experience.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those were my two kind of big awakening moments. Was this one, and then this second one that was like this was the end all. Like that was the one I connected to everything. And this
Oh, yeah.
whole 3 hours of this bliss attack. And I was also getting kind of downloads and truths about the reality and how things are. And I knew these were true because of how I was feeling at the time for no reason. I was this in this state of ecstasy with completely drug and alcohol free, and it just in this state for no reason. And it was just the work I was doing at the time. So that's where this I want everyone to experience it. I do.
Okay, so it's good that you already started to talk about the 13 rungs of to a higher elevation of consciousness. Um, Tell us about what each rung represents, like in the bigger picture of transformation, since you already started to talk about that. Tell us about the
Mhm.
importance of each and how it kind of interacts or builds on one another.
Yeah, so they're all equally as important. I wouldn't say one is any more important than the other.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not strict. I'm done with strict. There was too much strictness in all these programs that I used to do, and so they're not like, you need to do this one and this one and this one. They're not in that. They're in an order that kind of
Chronological,
makes
not at
sense.
all.
Yeah, yeah. They're not like the AA 12 steps or something. You do one step, two step, three, and you do
Mm-hmm.
not do four step before you do two. It's not. I'm tired of the rigidness of all that. So they're all equally important, but the level of importance can be subjective. So you might, like there's 13 of them, and like for me coming into this, health is wealth is the fourth one. And health is
Mm-hmm.
not something that's just something that kind of comes natural to me now. I kind of found health in my 30s, and worked out a lot, and so health, I don't really need to focus too much on my body. I got that one. But there's other concepts that need more of my attention. So that's why they're, the level of importance is going to be subjective, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in an order where you got to do one, then you can do two, and then they're all equally important in their concepts. They're not necessarily these tight, rigid steps. Their depth into each one. And so the focus is on the whole thing. And so you just kind of, it's just they kind of done naturally. Like I can give an example of how they came in an order, because emotional alchemy is the fifth one. And
Mm-hmm.
that's about turning these base emotions into elevated emotions. So these base emotions of judgment and anger and fear, and try to turn them into elevated emotions, alchemize them, because the first law of thermodynamics is energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. So um, transforming that energy into something, alchemy is from the base metals turning into gold, something
Mm-hmm.
that real sorcerers apparently can do. But my kind of sorcerer can do emotional alchemy every day because I do it. And so the idea of turning these base emotions into elevated emotions, there's kind of a tool to use in the meantime. And there's forgiveness is a big thing, right? Unforgiveness can stand in the way of our spiritual progress. And so the third one, which is surrender to serenity, is important to understand before you get to emotional alchemy, because surrender to serenity is about understanding human behavior better. It's this it's to understand that people do bad things because they're just programmed to do them, and it's not necessarily their fault. And to
Mm-hmm.
try to let go of, because anything that tragic happens in people's lives, holding on to that anger, and it's usually someone that does something, and holding on to that anger to that person is not doing us any good. The Buddha said, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So the idea of understanding human behavior better and why humans behave the way they do, which is that whole rung is about that, and it's gets deep into it. It makes it easier to then forgive and let go of things and people that have wronged us in the past, and to be able to alchemize those emotions. And you can alchemize all kinds of emotions. You can do it in an instant, and kind of people tend to make us want to you can be judgmental of a person, that they could scare you, like it can be kind of a scary person. You could be jealous of that person. They could disgust you. But if you take all those emotions and you turn it into curiosity. um, Mel Robbins has a book out, that's buzzy book, I see it everywhere, Let Them Theory, which is kind of about disconnecting yourself from people, and just focusing on you, and stop with the controlling and let them do whatever. But and that's good. That's fine. That's much better than, you know, trying to control people and make them, I want them to be this way. That's fine. But I say take it a step further and study them. If you
Mm-hmm.
study them, now you're getting a connection to them, because what makes letting them good is also what detracts from it, because you're disconnecting yourself completely from that person. But we are all one consciousness, one unity. So if you start to study them in these negative emotions that come up, you start to study them, study what's going on inside you. Now you're getting kind of a connection. Now you're alchemizing the emotion. Now that
Mm-hmm.
emotion of judgment is kind of turning into curiosity, and you're kind of thinking, boy, I wonder what did they go through to make them be acting this way? Like what is going on in their lives? And now you're starting to ask questions, and it's like, oh, I bet it's not good. I bet they're really struggling. And now there's kind of an empathy thing, instead of just disconnecting and just be like, whatever, they're doing whatever. So, emotional alchemy is a big one. But like I said, they're in an order, but
Mm-hmm.
they're fluid. So I wanted to keep them not too strict.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that word fluid. So let's talk about, let's say, someone who would be reading your book. So each reader would have an individual experiences, right? When they start reading your book. And, to someone who would want to have some guidance towards the path of healing, how would you want them, or how can they use the 13 rungs to help them? Like, what's the best way or the best approach? Since you mentioned that the rungs don't really have a chronological order. So, what would be the best approach to get the most out of, the 13 rungs?
Well, yeah, like I said, they're all equally as important, and the main thing is to don't worry about the kind of symptom
Mhm.
that you're experiencing, because I mean we're all, the biggest symptom I see these days is the phone addiction. And there's no meetings or these pills for phone addiction. That's a really new one. And I see people in the gym that, and it's not just girls, it's guys too, that they can't even get through a full set without checking their phone. Like they can't even get 30 seconds, and they can't check their, that's an issue. There is a spiritual issue going on, that you cannot just be. You have to be doing all the time, and doing. And what this whole what you'll get out of this, and it's and there's gambling addiction, there's shopping addiction, there's things we struggle with, there's just general depression, there's anxiety. All
Mhm.
these things labeled chronic are all even autoimmune disorders. There's a lot of physical disorders that the spiritual can affect the body so much. So there's a lot of physical things. Cancer can be caused by the spiritual bankruptcy. Everything is caused by spiritual bankruptcy, everything chronic. And so, what you can get out of it if you suffer from anything chronic, which is, I mean, there's just a whole array of things that people can be struggling from. And to get the most out of it, just reading it and understanding, and then taking it into taking action with it. And there's going to be things that come up that people would be like, oh boy, I really struggle with that one. And well,
Mhm.
that's going to require more attention. then I would say, that's, there's going to be ones that's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm better at that. But then there's going to be something that you're going to really struggle with, and whether that's a mindset or one of them is comfort and discomfort. Like I like staying in my comfort zone, and comfort zone is great, but nothing ever grows there.
Mhm.
So, there's I would say focus on, and like your spirit will tell you, like that's the one we're struggling with the most, and it could be several, or it could be all of them. I mean, I was at a point in my life. This is the book I wish someone would have gave me when I was 20, and I would probably be in a mansion and married and extremely happy because I would have gotten all this stuff together without all this suffering. But that's not how it worked for me. But that's okay. That's okay. I like where I'm at. But it's just to get the most out of it, you know, and I plan to I want to write more and kind of do, webinars and things like that. And it's very beginning, at the time of this recording, and book's only been out a couple months. So I was told this is the seed that plants the career tree. So I hope to help people get through it more. But the most is to kind of read it and see what pops up and focus on that.
So you already touched on this a little bit, but let's expound on what they can do if they're stuck on a particular rung. Like, do they get external help, or perhaps they can reach out to some people, perhaps if they're stuck on a particular rung? What is the best way for them to get out of that?
Yeah, if they're stuck on a particular one that's really struggling, I recommend things throughout the book, in each rung, kind of what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're struggling with things. But certainly there's meetings, and I would never talk bad about if you're struggling with alcohol, go to an AA meeting. There's things I kind of disagree with stuff, but there's good stuff too. And therapy is amazing. And something that helped me was I saw a shamanic energy healer who went in and kind of helped with the balancing of my chakras, and physical things like yoga and acupuncture, and there are things that we can do. And but each one, if you're kind of stuck on one, there is certainly help out there, and I'm here certainly to help it all. I love helping. It's what you said in the beginning, hope dealer. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
I was a pretty lousy dope dealer because I might be the only person in the history of drug dealing to lose money dealing drugs, because I did them all. But it's I'm a much better hope dealer. So that's something I am certainly here, but there's also help out there. I'd suggest therapy is amazing, and it's not even that you're just getting advice from that person as much as you're talking your issues through. If you're constantly keeping in, it's the biggest thing. And whether you see an energy healer kind of therapist or just a natural therapist, or just you're talking your stuff through, and that is a really suggestible thing if you're stuck on anything. And it's amazing that therapy, I don't get as much from them as much as I get from me at just talking it out, and like, oh, I've just figured out my own problem. But I wouldn't have never figured it out if I didn't have someone to discuss it with. So that's the biggest thing, is talk things through, I would say.
Okay, so what kind of transformation can they expect after going through each of the rungs? And would you say you have reached that part already?
Yeah, I mean, it's transformation is an ongoing. We are infinite beings, so we have infinite room to grow. I'm always growing. I would never say I'm just fully healed and I'm better. I've when you cross the river of change, there is a very strong undercurrent of discomfort, and it really comes at you. So when you cross that river of change, if you want to cross it, and I can tell you, I'm on the other bank now, and it feels amazing. But to
Mm.
get through that river and that undercurrent of discomfort is not fun. But what you can expect on the other side of that bank is freedom. I mean, that is what is on the other side of fear, is freedom.
Mhm.
And it's an absolute wonderful, beautiful place. It's not to say I don't struggle at times emotionally, and but things are just so much better now that I'm free, and I have a better understanding of the nature of reality and things, and it's so much more fun. I have more fun. I'm not miserable. I have my personality, but for the first time in my life, I've really found myself. Like
Mhm.
I understand who I am. I am a loving awareness of myself. And so understanding these things and what they can really expect is that awakening, is that, that openness and like, oh wow, like when you turn off airplane mode, there's no turning it back on. So, they can expect these experiences that I have and these synchronicities that happen and just this amazing new life, and it's just absolutely incredible. But that's what I hope these things, and there's a formula to it, but the end result is one of these experiences where you have your own bliss attack and
Mhm.
everything
Mhm.
changes. Like they say in the Bible, the scales were removed from my eyes. It's You
Mhm.
see the world in a completely different shade. That's for sure.
That's something to aspire for. So you have your book, and I know it's just recently been out. So tell us about your experience as an author this time and how long it took you to complete your book. And if you can also share with us some highs and lows of your experience, that will be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So writing it was just amazing. I mean, because I was tapped into this field, right? So I mean, the writer's block did not exist, but this came to me when I was living in Sedona, and I was still really struggling. I had been turned off airplane mode, but I was trying to turn it back on with booze, and it wasn't until I crossed that discomfort river of change in late 2022, 2023, it's 25, yeah. And really that's when I just was like, all right, I'm ready for this. So the idea for the book, I don't count that first 6 months because I kind of came up with an outline. And so that first 6 months of writing it was it just wasn't good. It wasn't good writing. I was still I wasn't completely dedicated to the process. My airplane mode hadn't my receiver hadn't been completely turned on. But once I got clean of everything and I started doing the work and doing the rungs, I was writing about the rungs and I knew this is what I needed to do. I just wasn't doing it. So, once I started doing and being the sorcerer that I was writing about being, I was healing as I was writing about it. So it all came to me very easily and very naturally. And, I had a book probably within 6 months, but I had an opportunity where I could write every single day and a lot. I took out I had a small 401k, from a mortgage job I used to work, and so I just decided life is about risks. And if you don't take risks, nothing cool is going to happen. So I just said, you know what? I don't need that for retirement. I found what I'm going to do forever. I could do this until I'm 90 years old, 100 and die. So, retirement was no longer something I was worried about. So I took that out and I was able to just dedicate myself and wrote it all I had the outline, but wrote pretty much all of it in 6 months. And so that was just a really magical time period. And the main thing with writing is to truly stay dedicated to it and stay open to you have that vision, and it's
Mm-hmm.
good to do something every day. And that's what I would definitely recommend to people trying to write. Even if you're just writing for 5 minutes, I know a lot of people have jobs and they're busy and they can't but even if you just write for like 5 minutes, it keeps it fresh and it keeps it going, and you're doing something every day. And maybe there's a day when you miss it or whatever, or a couple days, but then you get back to it and you're like, all right, I got to do a few minutes of writing. I got to do this. So that's the number one thing I would say for writing. And this program will, if you're ever experiencing writer blog, I'm telling you, like this, these things that I recommend in my book will that writer's block is gone, because there's no more block. You're now connected to the field, and which all ideas of that ever will be and ever have been are this is a field of information, and it can be tapped into like a keg. And so if you're experiencing writer's block or anything like that this is a good way to turn it off, and it'll there's a formula to it, certainly. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest recommendation I would say for people is to just keep with it and daily be adding to it, even if it's just 5 minutes.
Did you run into any challenges at all while you were working on your book?
I just there oh yeah, there's always challenges. There's is this going to work right? And and giving my book, especially to my dad, who's into this, the kind of spiritual thing, is a very, very smart person. um Kind of an emotional vacuum, of course, but like we've gotten a little bit closer. He wasn't around a lot when I was growing up, but we've gotten closer in my adult years, and I've let things go, and we have a better relationship now. I was angry at him for a long time, but I kind of gave it to him and said, here's what it is. And I got my first compliment from him in my entire life, but also said, like, this needs editing. It's like a diamond in the rough. And so
Mm.
it was kind of like, that's frustrating for me, because it's like, why can't you just say it's good? And like that whole kid dad thing happened.
Yeah.
But he was absolutely right. It needed some structural editing and and it really, what I gave him and what was the final product is a very, very different book. And I thought it was done, but I kind of had a subconscious feeling that maybe it wasn't done. And then once
Mhm.
my dad kind of said, keep going, like, this needs more, not just editing, like typos, and of course it needed that, but structural editing and moving stuff around. And so that's frustrating, right? When you say, when the book is,
Right.
you think that the book is done, like it can't
Mhm.
get any better, and then someone is just like, it's not done. You need
Mhm.
to keep going. And so that's very frustrating, especially coming from my dad, but he was 100% right. It needed a bunch of structural editing, and things moved around and changed. But yeah, that was the most frustrating part, is it's done. And then that whole process I let take for a while. And that was an extra 3 months. So,
Mhm.
that kind of uh that was the frustrating part, I'd say.
So your dad's feedback was very instrumental in getting this book out. Um, would you say that's the nicest, or it has the most impact on you, or are there any other feedback that you got that also
No,
had the same impact on you?
I have a review here really that really was good. I kind of sent it around to podcasters and people. I sent the PDF.
Mhm.
And this gentleman sent me. He had just closed down his podcast, but he wanted to give me an endorsement. And so this is from Jeffrey Long, MD, author of the New York Times bestselling Evidence of the Afterlife: The Science of Near-Death Experiences. So, not bad. So this is what he said about my book. Sourcery 101 is an electrifying, transformative guide that blends humor, wisdom, and deep spiritual insight to propel readers toward higher consciousness. Justin Shaw masterfully weaves personal experience, pop culture references, and profound metaphysical truths into a compelling narrative that is entertaining as it is enlightening. His 13 rung system provides structured yet fluid approach to self-discovery, helping readers embrace emotional alchemy, challenge societal conditioning, and unlock their full potential. With a voice that is equal parts raw, hilarious, and deeply insightful, Shaw delivers a game-changing book that will leave you questioning reality, redefining personal growth, and tapping into the limitless power of source energy. If you're ready to elevate your mind, heal your soul, and step into your power, Sorcery is an absolute must-read. So that would be the nicest thing. And
Amazing.
people have said nice things, but nothing, quite on that level. And he didn't have to do that. I didn't ask for that from him. He
Mhm.
just responded and was like, I read your book and I'd like to give you an endorsement. And I said, okay, well, I don't know what. All right, cool. And that's what he sent me. So that's things like that are just like, okay, I'm on the right path.
Mhm. Right.
I know that for sure. I'm on the right path, and people are very nice and they say nice things and stuff. But that one I know is just like, wow, that one went above and beyond. So things like that will keep me going. I know it's not for everybody. It's not like there's gonna be people that hate it, especially if you're in the skeptical atheist side, or the really truly zealot religious side. There might be some things in there that's just like, oh. But if you have an open mind, sorcery is not about changing minds, it's about opening them. Like that's where that's the exciting division of people I'm interested in.
Yeah. So that must have been amazing for you. Looking ahead to this year, so we're a few months into the year, can you share your goals for both personal growth and the continued impact of your book?
Yes. So yeah, that's yeah, I kind of brushed on it a little bit earlier, but I'm hoping this is the seed that plants the career tree. And I'm doing much, I want much more than just a book. The book is the starting point. It is the seed that's where I was guided to do. Like the
Mhm.
things I want to do. Source kind of said, this is your starting point. This is the seed. You need to start here. So I am at the very, very beginning of what I hope to be a long career, but I really hope to be able to do more online stuff. I've been off social media for so long, and like it's a new world to me because I just one of the things I did 4 years ago was I just deleted everything. I just deleted all my social media accounts, everything, and I just it was like a horse wearing blinders. I ran a better race, but now I'm ready to use it in a better way. Social media is not bad or good; it's how you use it. So I hope to be able to do that and kind of get out to people and help them along this 13 rung system. I would love to do kind of lectures. I call myself kind of a mystical comedian where I can use my stand-up comedy, roots and mix that in and make people not just laugh but think and feel as well. Because I don't want to just stand up and tell jokes. I want to make people feel and think along with laughing. So I hope to be able to kind of foster that in. And this year is just about creating awareness around the book and the system and myself. And so I hope to, be able to do that, do the online thing. And I have other books too. I would love to do maybe more of a workbook version of this. This is more of just a formal book, but there could be a kind of 101.5 where it's kind of in the middle. And then I've got ideas for a 102, Sourcery 102. There's a training school where I'm not a trained shaman, but I would love to be trained in the shaman arts. And there's a school you can go to. It's in South America. That's like, a month or so. And you get on there and you train to be a shaman. And I would love to write as, kind of Sourcery 102, the next level, and become a shaman and see what kind of stuff happens down there and what kind of more healing I can bring people. And so this is definitely just the beginning. And I really hope to continue on with this because it's what I love doing.
We're all looking forward to that. So this is going to be a very busy year for you. Um, Justin, as we close this conversation, what's one lasting thought or takeaway you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners?
Okay, there's a couple quick ones. One I would say, if you feel like the world is against you, it probably is, but the universe is for you, and that's all that matters. The second one is that, the journey is the destination. And the biggest one is number three, which is don't stop before the miracle happens. So the miracle happens once you have ingrained yourself with whole new programming. We're all just kind of walking computers, and some of us need to be reprogrammed. Once you ingrain yourself with this new system of healing and happiness and greatness, once you ingrain yourself with it takes effort in the beginning, but once it's part of your subconscious programming, now you're on autopilot for greatness.
Mhm.
And a lot of us are on autopilot either for, failure or mediocrity or greatness. And you know which one of the three you're on, but you can always retrain yourself and get on the autopilot for greatness. And then it just kind of you just gravitate that way. So don't stop before the miracle happens.
Such inspiring words from you, Justin. Please invite everyone to visit your website and follow you in social media, and of course, get a copy of your book.
Yeah, so yeah, that's on you can get on Amazon or anywhere. I would search my name. Amazon's kind of weird. It auto corrects it because it's misspelled with a U, and it tends to auto correct it and send you to a book that's apparently about becoming a better wizard. So
Mm.
you can get on Justin Elshaw is probably the best thing, or you can go to the website, which is awakenthesorcerer.com. There they have links for that. So it's on Amazon, or I believe it's on Barnes and Noble too, but Sorcery 101, and then that's the website, and then it's on Amazon. And then I'm back on social media for the first time in 4 years. So
Mhm.
if you want an extra follower, I haven't even told friends and family I'm on it just yet because I'm not I'm just kind of just getting used to it. But I'm on Instagram, so if you follow me, I'll follow you right back if you want a follower because I'm gathering people from these things, and I kind of want to follow them, and if they're following me, and I just want to keep my Instagram in this little happy bubble, like I I only want to follow people. If you're watching this, you're good people. I want to follow you. But it's sorcerer underscore 13 on Instagram. So those are the I'll have more eventually, but that's the main. I'll keep everyone posted on Instagram where things go with YouTube and stuff like that. That hasn't happened yet. So, but Instagram that'll be the hub.
So, Justin, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your powerful journey with us today. Thank you to everyone tuning in. I hope you found inspiration in our conversation with Justin. If you'd like to explore his unique approach to healing, be sure to grab a copy of Sorcery 101. That's SOURCERY 101. Make sure you type that correctly. 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness by Justin L. Shaw. It's available in hardcover, softcover, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Balboa Press, online bookstore, and of course, other resellers. So thank you so much, Justin. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Author Roundup.